Welcome to the Union FC Indy Insider. I'm Brandon Faust, joined with Union FC Indy Sporting Director Rob Klatte and Operations Director Dan Kapsalis. Guys, how are we doing today?
Having a great day. Excited to be here.
Good stuff, Brandon. Doing good.
Well, one of the things that we want to talk about, we talk a lot about the importance of player development at the club. This has been a priority for the club for years and years and years, and we've been trying to focus on that more and more. And what does that look like? And so today what we want to do is jump into a conversation around one of these bigger tensions in particularly youth soccer is winning versus development. Nobody wants to lose a match, but the win at all costs mentality and the decisions that come with it often produce something that's toxic and unhealthy. So how can we explore this topic and approach it as a club, as parents, coaches, and as players? And so I thought it would be great for everyone to hear from you guys on this topic. It's something that we hear throughout the club, and we I think everyone top to bottom is trying to strive to apply these principles. But I think it'd be great just to give us a little bit more meat on the bone with that. When you guys hear this paradigm, and maybe it's a false paradigm, I don't know, of winning versus development, what comes to mind for you guys?
Well, first of all, it's a topic that we discuss on a daily basis. And sometimes it's a tougher sell, but winning and development work together. They're separate, but they also complement and work together. So I guess the first thing is define winning. What is winning to you? What does it mean? What is winning? Is winning result on a scoreboard? Or is winning improving? Is winning learning? You have to define what winning is. There's lots of different ways to win. People look at scoreboards and rankings and records and all those things, but we have the belief that there's all kinds of types of winning going on. And that type of winning fosters proper development.
Yeah, I think you've got this, all these elements. It's multifaceted. One, you've got the players. Players want to compete and win. To do so and give them the best chance. To do that, they've got to develop their game. To develop their game, they've got to deal with loss, which means you're not traditionally winning because you've got to overcome areas of the game that you still need to improve. It's very difficult in this day and age and in society to accept that losing is part of that process. But I've always been, as a coach, always had the belief that you have to be willing to lose in order to ultimately be able to win. And I think that's that's the balance between those two things. I think it also takes a lot of trust. Parents have to put a lot of trust in the club, and then the club has to have coaches in place that have the same mindset. I think the same struggles that parents and players deal with, coaches deal with in a game. No one wants to be outscored in a game, or we didn't take advantage of our opportunities. There's frustration builds there. But the reality is then the coach has to look at what occurs in a match and what opportunities there are for growth from that match. And that's what we train the next time. And then the next match is the next test to see how we are in our development.
When does this idea of winning actually help development? I think you guys touched on it a little bit, but also when does it hurt it?
Well, winning it's fun to win. People want to win, right? We always talk about what Rob just mentioned. We always talk about, if you're looking for a result, just like if you're going to school and you want to get an education so you get a better job, there's a process, right? Landing that end result is part of but there's a process. You have to prepare, you have to practice, you have to perform. If you do those things, you put yourself in a position to have a better chance at getting the desired result that you want. Okay, but you have to do all those things before that. So when does winning help? Winning builds confidence. Winning makes you feel good, builds confidence, right? When you're winning without understanding and learning and improving, you can lose. Doesn't mean you're a loser. You can win. Doesn't mean you're a winner, right? You can lose and be a winner, and you can win and be a loser. In so many different ways. You can. There's so many different dynamics. So the winning piece is the desired result you're wanting, but there's a process to get there. The development is what we talk about is that growth mindset, that long-term marathon approach to developing. And what are you learning along the way? You're going to lose. You're going to win. There's no doubt about that. How do you handle winning? How do you handle losing? So there are benefits to both, but they go hand in hand. But you have to be focused more on the process and not just the result.
Yeah. I think if you look at for our club, for instance, there's ways to approach playing at younger age groups that can afford the team a better chance of having a higher score on the scoreboard at the end of the game than others. However, those very same approaches get found out in the long run, and they actually restrict the player's development.
Yeah.
That means that they're not as prepared when they get to senior age groups to be able to, quote, win, to be able to compete. And so I think there's an element, a process of, we've got to look at things from like a U8 through U12 age group, as this is the golden age of technical development. It's the time that the ball mastery is really the focus, and the players gravitate into growing to love with the ball and fall in love with the ball. And that we want to take advantage of that experience and that opportunity, because they're going to be getting social pressures hitting at U12 through U14 and U15 that will start to minimize their willingness to risk in the technical development areas. And those are the times that we then have to teach them, how do you compete? How do you compete in a match? How do we figure out how to give ourselves the best chance of getting a result? And then probably from 15 and on, we're trying to not only continue that development, but then competing to how do we end up with higher score at the end of the game. And maybe we have to change approach at U15 and above, how we play the game.
Yeah.
But we've learned that process of how to play in different ways when we were younger.
Yeah, I think there is that, everybody can remember a day, whether it's when you played or in recent years coaching, or a team that you go against that they have a player, especially the U8, U9, U10 type of ages, a player who's exceptionally fast.
Yeah, more dominant. Right.
Someone plays a ball up to them and they're gone, right? And then I've watched time and time again that player in the next 2 to 3 years, that's all they've done, because the coach was so committed to making sure they won every game that player's development just fell way behind.
Sure.
And they didn't know what it was like to be in a position to play an outside back or a central midfield, or even those principles on the ball. And so just talk a little bit of, when is it, if this is a continuum, right? This winning development continuum, just go with that for example. If this is a spectrum, what are the two extremes?
Well, the one extreme of winning, where you're pushing kids to win at all costs, like bypassing the development process to get, like you said, playing a direct ball up to the fast kid, big strong kid, but you're bypassing their midfield and the kids aren't learning. That type of style can be detrimental, because you're not developing players. With development, you got to be careful not to push too hard, where you're going to maybe create some burnout, right? Because burnout is a real thing with our younger kids. This is a team game. We're talking about soccer. This is a team game, right? It's not golf. It's not tennis, which are great sports, but this is a team game. So it takes a lot of, there's so many different things that are developing. Our mindset is, if you're learning, you're winning.
Yeah.
If you're improving, you're winning. If you're competing, you're winning. There's, like we talked about before, so many different ways to win. But the extreme, Brandon, I think is, and Rob can piggyback on it, when you're winning to just get the result, to appease parents and appease, fight for the next league level, but you're bypassing the process of actually training. It takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time.
Brandon, if you look at Johnny Lightning, who you were just speaking of, who plays up top, and Johnny Lightning plays up top because the coach knows Johnny's pace and ability to go and run faster than everyone's going to give the team the best chance of scoring more goals than the opposition. However, a focus on development means Johnny Lightning not only plays up top, but we also force Johnny to play in the center of midfield, where his speed is not such an attribute that separates him from other players. It forces him to develop other parts of his game, his first touch, his field awareness, being able to know where his teammates are and everything. It also puts a different role on him where he has to do more work defensively for the team for it to compete and be successful. And so I think that balance of winning and development, the team may win, but Johnny Lightning does not win then if we leave him up top in the long term. Parents are happy because we're beating people, but in the long term, Johnny gets caught out by the players who are playing other positions who are forced to develop in other ways. And as soon as teams learn to not provide so much space behind their defense, Johnny's attributes are no longer so dominant.
And part of it too is what Rob's saying. Part of it is we don't want kids to be pigeonholed into a certain area or certain like you're a defender. That's all you're doing. You get the ball, you send it up to the guy up top. We want kids to be creative. We want them to have that. Every year when I played as a kid, I always remember saying to myself, "Wow, I'm better than I was last year." And I worked harder. Wow, I'm better than I was last year. There was a level of improvement. That was winning for me. And then it gets you to a point where you can compete against anybody. So in a team game, we want kids to be able to be creative and not be, well, I watch it in basketball. The point guard, all you're doing is passing. You're not shooting. And there's coaches that tell you, do not shoot the ball. All you're doing is passing the ball. And they're great passers, but they're not complete players, right? Because they're being restricted. We don't want to restrict kids. We want them to be open and free to make some decisions. That's what this game is. Yeah. It's decision making all the time.
Absolutely.
We want kids to be able to have that.
And as you get to the higher levels or play for a more competitive team in those older ages or whatever that might look like, I remember a time when it was like, man, I was a number 9. I played a striker. My coach was like, our left back got injured in warmups. You're playing left back today. And I'm like, well, how am I? And he's like, you've got it. I trust you. And I took that as an insult at first because I'm like, no, this is my job. My job is to go score the goals and do this. He's like, no. Also, this is going to help you become a better player because when you go to college and play, there are going to be a lot of people who want your spot, and you just need to find a way to be on the field. And my job is to make sure you have the skills to do that. And I remember that. And I remember my parents being like, at first, like kind of step back. And then they're like, what's going on? Like, they're like, what's that about? And then they're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Good for your coach. You should do that more often. I'm like, no, don't cheer this on. But I think that is the idea, especially in those younger ages. Yeah. We even see in the transition from 7v7 to 9v9 that a lot of that individual speed sometimes isn't as helpful anymore because there's less room. It's a bigger field, but there's more players on the field.
At the same level,
all those kinds of different things. Yeah. And so what does this look like at the kind of that 7v, junior academy, senior academy, and to travel into the older age groups? How does this balance change and progress? You talked a little bit about that earlier, Rob, as like, we're going to really go a little bit more competitive, but still do the player development thing as you get up to age 15, 16, 17, 18. But how does that balance change as players kind of get older?
Well, you've got different priorities, and as a club, we provide the coaches of different areas of the game to focus on. And so, if you look at like our pathway, our under 8s, and our futures as well, all they're doing is ball mastery. All they're doing is 1v1 skills. That we're not really focused on developing a team managed way of playing, though we do play against other clubs who do. Yeah, and so we play against other clubs that are focused on passing a lot at those age. We want our players to grow in their individual confidence on top of the ball so that by the time they hit the U9 through U10 age group, they're beginning to be able to take those individual skills that they've learned on top of the ball and they start to be able to pair it with another player. So we're looking for 1 and 2 player combinations, ability to play a wall pass with someone else. Understand how, hey, if Danny has the ball, can I move to a position where Danny can find me? And then as we get into the U11 and U12 age groups, the focus is on small group activities, 3-player combinations with the play, small group defending. What does small group shape need to look like? Building our triangles and off the ball to be able to retain possession
Transition.
and
Mhm.
transition moments and overall. And you can start to talk about team, and we bring in then starting to bring in competing into that. Not just a focus on ourselves, but now we're focusing on what we're doing in relationship to what an opposition is doing. So maybe we've been working on building out of the back. So winning might be, hey, yeah, we're successful in building now the back, but it's also failure if we don't recognize the other team is pressing us with 5 players now. And now those short passes building out the back, that's not the right choice. The right choice is bypassing that into a player that breaks those lines. As you get into U13 and 14, you really start to get into the competing age groups, and you start to bring in overall team tactics and an understanding of 11v11 play. And as we go 15 and above, it's a world of competing and how can we organize ourselves to try to get better results on the field than the opposition.
Yeah, and Rob makes a great point. The idea is to be players that are versatile, right? We always talk about soccer as a chess match, right? There's a lot of strategy going on.
Yeah.
What's the other team doing? What formation playing? What's their counter? How they work on their flank play? All those things. It's a chess match, but it's not. It shouldn't be. Here's why. Chess, if you've played chess before, each piece can only move a certain way. You got your rook that can only go, 90 degrees. You got the bishop that can go diagonal. You got the pawn that can only go 1 or 2 steps. They're restricted. You have to come up with a strategy. We want it to be a chess match, but we don't want the restrictions on the players. They have a role, they have a purpose, they have a responsibility. But we don't want to say you can only move this way, you can only move that way. That's restrictive. We want to get away from that. You mentioned Johnny Lightning. That was me. When I played in the youth days, I was up top. I was a quick, fast guy that wouldn't score goals. I got to college and played at Indiana. They wanted me to get in the back. And I mean, I didn't know how to spell defense. I never came past midfield when I played. Get the ball to Dan, let him go to goal, boom. That was a detriment to my playing. I mean, I struggled when I got there. I had to play defense. I had to get back and play defense. I didn't know what they were talking about. No, just give me the ball. I'll go do my thing. So I lived that piece where I was restricted, even though I had a talent that was beneficial. I didn't become a complete player until I got into into that mode where, okay, now I'm in the midfield, I'm distributing balls and I'm moving. So it took some time, but back in the day, it was about finding the best opportunity to get that desired result. That's not what we need to do anymore.
Yeah, Dan, I think speaking to your chess analogy, I think the view of soccer as chess is you've got players with different attributes, and those would be their restrictions.
Right.
Our goal for development is to create a tabletop full of queens that can move in every direction,
Everywhere.
that can do everything.
That are interchangeable.
Yes.
Right. And we can put a guy in the back and up top and outside. We can play a number 6 and a number 8.
Of course.
And a number 4 and a number 2.
And of course, as that happens, as you get to 15 and 16, you don't have a table full of queens. Everyone's they're going to have into what their abilities, their strengths, and their weaknesses. And that becomes then the chess game of balancing how can we put together this team to give us the best chance of competing with
Team
the
of
opposition.
Queens is a great, that's the best
Team
analogy.
of Queens.
Team of Queens.
So how do we create a better scoreboard then? Obviously the winning and the loss, more goals or less goals in a game, happens. And, I've seen at times, I think there can be this impression that development is just code word for we don't care, but I think development, ultimately what I hear it means you care even more because you're thinking about the
100%.
long-term growth of that player and not just the result on a Saturday that no one's going to remember in 5 years, right? Or in 3 weeks. So how do we cultivate a better scoreboard, and how do we help players, parents, coaches, everybody kind of in the mix on this, understand that better scoreboard? Because there are some tangible moments that you'll see, wow, you can tell that kid has been really logging the technique hours.
You can tell.
You can tell because instead of when they're out wide, the ball going out of bounds every time, they stop, they control the ball, and now we're going towards the goal, and we have an improved chance, right? So those are just those little like measurements, but
And
again, it's a progression. It doesn't happen overnight. So how do we cultivate and how do we communicate this better scoreboard, if you will?
part of it is educating,
Mm.
right? It's a tough sell to sell a growth mindset philosophy and a learning and instead of just a winning mindset, right? Learning and improving. Um, but it's more of we have parents that take their kids to other clubs because they think that team's going to be better for them and they're going to win and the grass is greener over there. Great, go. Disappointing because they're not understanding
Right.
what we're doing. We have parents that talk about they want to win. They just want to win, and then losing is terrible and we hate losing and they want to win. It's the wrong mindset because you're going to lose. There's always somebody out there better than
Mhm.
you, no matter what you're doing, right? So it's about educating and it's about constantly doing this, making people buy into what we're doing. You don't have to play if you're playing. There's ECNL, there's MLS Next, and all these parents and kids are drinking this Kool-Aid about it's got the only way you're going to make it is if you go there. If you're good enough, they'll find you. You could be in Boise, Idaho. If you're Michael Jordan, they'll find you.
Mhm.
Okay, so we are providing a fuller experience and a competitive environment at the same time that's focusing on not just player development, but people development. You're learning character. You're learning how to deal with
Mhm.
losing, how to deal with a bad call from a
Mm.
referee, how to deal with winning. We've won a lot. We've also lost a lot. So
Mhm.
you learn from all those things. So we have to do a better job of educating our folks to understand that, look at the bigger picture.
Mm.
And that's sometimes a tough sell.
I talked to you earlier about U8 through U12 being the golden age of ball
Yeah.
mastery. I think one of the drivers for our coaches and our directors at those youngest ages is getting players to learn to compete with themselves. And so not viewing the ability to be able to juggle the ball one time as failure. Oh, I'm
Mhm.
terrible at this. No, one is my max right now.
Mhm.
Can I beat that?
Mhm.
And that little small spark of learning to compete with yourself
Yeah.
then is the driver of development. And then I think our coaches also and as a club, we have to ensure that we regularly communicate with the families that are on the teams. And I often have done this. I'll go back to when I was coaching the 2011 several years ago. And at tournaments, usually after a game or two, there would be a pizza team would have a little pizza thing. And I would go down then. I would just have conversations with the families at those times and just make sure that the parents heard how I see the game, how I view the team's development,
Yeah.
the individual players' development, what we still need to do to get better, and things that I see us. Hey, there's a big difference than
Mhm.
3-6 months ago. Do you see these things? And ensuring that we're pointing out the elements that is that growth,
Yeah.
so that they can understand that and not just look at what the scoreboard might be.
Yeah.
That might still be we're winning games,
Mhm.
but I could still challenge us to say, hey, we want to get better at X, Y, or Z, and we're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, because there are times where you might get the result in the match.
Yeah, but you're not
But the
performing.
performance
Right.
was,
You're
I
not
mean, it's like you
performing.
won a game 2-0 and it was a penalty kick and a worldy free kick, but
Right.
the rest of it was meh. The ball didn't move much.
And your goalkeeper pulled out 15
Yeah,
worldies.
yeah. And it was interesting. There was a game that I was coaching this weekend, and a parent afterwards. It was a game where we won on the scoreboard. It was a close on the scoreboard, but they were like, "Man, we had like 80% possession. We can tell that the ball was moving around, and the things that the group of coaches have been working on, like that was really cool." And as a coach, you're like, "Oh, that's awesome!" Like they're seeing that. They're not just seeing like this is a match. We could have won by 5 goals or something like that. It was like, wow, we're really seeing the improvement on this, this, and this. And then on the flip side, there'll be sometimes where parents will make a comment and they say, "Oh, we played awesome." And it was like, we won 3-0, but like, we did not play great. Right? We got some goals. And so I think it is a healthy conversation. I think everybody who has a child is like, I want my kid to succeed. I want them to do well.
Sure
I want
they
them
do.
to feel
Sure they do.
good.
Of course.
But I think at the same time, I think that is something that's been refreshing and unique and courageous that the club continues to do, is to say, no, player development actually matters. We take it seriously. We're paying attention to this. We got to make sure that these elements at this age, you kind of talk about that golden age with the ball. After they move from the golden age with the ball, what does that then allow them to do in the future? Because if they don't get it then, it's probably, just from a practical perspective, hard to get those hours in, right, to catch up.
And
But what does it open up for them?
They fear peer criticism then. So if you don't build that ball mastery at an early age, now I avoid, once I've got the peer culture, I avoid doing the things I'm not good at. And I can't kick left-footed. I avoid kicking left-footed, which deters the development even further.
Yeah.
So then as coaches, as families, as teams, we've got to support. Failure is avoiding failure. That is the real loss.
And we want kids, kids are afraid of making mistakes, right? And we see examples of it at the professional level and coaches, and we've got to educate our coaches. We got to do a good job of putting the right people in front of these kids who have
for sure
this mindset. But we're all parents, right? Have you ever made a mistake as a parent? Think about it. And what do? You learn from it.
Yeah.
That's growth.
Yeah.
That's learning. That's improving.
Yeah.
You know what that is? That's winning.
Yeah.
That's winning. We've all made mistakes. That's winning. That's
Mm-hmm.
winning when you're learning and you're improving and you're committed to that growth mindset and you're not afraid of making mistakes. You're going to make them. They're going to happen. Yeah. I think I made 3 before I got over here today, right? So, I mean, it just happens. It's going to happen. Be open to it and get kids to not play out of fear and pressure. Kids have to love the game. Yeah. We grew up, we loved the game. Yeah. We didn't have structure like we have now. It was the backyard or on a dirt field. We just loved playing. It was a passion just to play. These kids need to find that passion. Yeah. And that will help them grow and that'll help them succeed. They will be successful above and beyond the game. Yeah. One knee injury and your career is over. Yeah. What are you going to do now? Yeah. What have you learned from this game that's going to catapult you into whatever else you're going to do next? Yeah. That's winning. That's winning.
So in closing, what's maybe one question, prompt, or idea that we could give to parents or anybody listening to this? One of the things that at different ages, it's like, all right, try not to coach them when they're on the ball, right? And trying to remind parents, hey, we're trying to let them make decisions. And sometimes okay, next time, maybe can we look at this after they don't have the ball, or right when they can listen. And I think there's a lot of parents who are doing a great job not coaching their kids from the sideline constantly and seeing their heads turn this way. And I kick the ball out of bounds and kind of looking over there, I've seen a lot of parents who are getting it and who are doing a great job with it. But what are some questions, some prompts as we get to the meatier part of the fixtures and the spring season? What are some prompts that we could give to, parents or anybody watching so they can kind of understand even more this developmental approach?
Well, one is stay in your lane, right? Coaches coach, players play, referees ref, and parents cheer. Once there's any crossover between any one of those, a player is getting into the ref, or the ref is getting into the coach, or the coach. Once there's crossover, there's chaos. Stay in that lane, and then understand, what is your goal for your child? What is your goal for your child? You want your child to learn and improve and have fun and love the game, develop? Do you want to play high school soccer? You're looking to play college? You're looking for a scholarship? You're looking for now this NIL money that's out there, and that's got a lot of parents really interested in. Oh my God, and it could be one of your kids. Yeah. The chances are it's less than 1%. That's the reality of those kids. There Fernando Mendoza's out there. God bless them, but there's not many of those kids out there. So what is your goal for your child? What is it that you're looking for? And what do you want out of this experience? And parents do different things. There's parents who pay their kids to score goals. It happens. So what's that kid going to do? He's going to ball hog the whole time. He's not being a team player. He's out there thinking, I'm going to make $10 every time I score a goal. There's parents that do that. So let the coaches guide your child and be supportive, and then just try to but make sure you understand, one, what is your goal for your child, and what is a realistic expectation that you can have for that child, and be open to a lot of different things that are going to happen, a lot of different ways to win. And that's what you want to focus on.
Yeah. I think I would add that looking if you want to support your child's development, then I think one of the things you want to do as a parent is take some time while they're playing, not to be micromanaging their game, but look at how they play and look at, are there things that your child avoids doing in a game? And then how can you applaud whenever they do try those and encourage them to try to do those things? That's going to round out that development thing. It may be the player that always dribbles and never passes. So you're like, oh, Johnny's pretty good at dribbling, but is passing. So then that encouragement when you get home. But I think the biggest thing for a player's development is the parent supporting the player's love and joy of playing, because that's what we want to create. Is we want to create an attachment to the game that the player still wants to come back. I just having a conversation with my youngest last night, and I was like, oh, do you want to play high school again? He's like, yeah. And I was like, do you want to play club next year as well? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's great. It makes sure that they are the driver, they are the motivator, they're the ones who are wanting to do this. And then we've got to ensure that we're helping create a supportive environment where they feel comfortable and confident in both success and failures, so they can develop. And then we are all winning.
It's good. It's good. Well, we want to say thanks, Dan. Thanks, Rob, for jumping in on this conversation. I think it's an important one for us to have.
We could talk about it for hours.
Yeah, it's a meaty one. It's meaty, and there's a lot in there.
It's dear to our heart, and we're passionate about, and it's what drives us every day. It really does.
And we want to say thanks to all of you for tuning in to this episode of the Union FC Indy Insider. We'll see you next time.